Hey, it's me again. Today I'm going to present you the relationship between photosynthesis and cellular respiration. So, why is it so special? What's their significance? Photosynthesis and cellular respiration are the primary energy providers of life. Even though they're opposite in one way, they're almost identical in another. Everything needs ATP. It's kind of like a battery and must be available at all times, or else you'll die. It depletes or recharges whenever it's used in these processes. So, what's their main difference? Well, in photosynthesis, they take carbon dioxide and water and turn it into sugar and oxygen. In my last video, I talked about artificial photosynthesis. As you remember, plants use regular photosynthesis, which creates its own energy source using this chemical equation. Carbon dioxide and water makes glucose and oxygen gas. In cellular respiration, however, it's the opposite and turns sugars and oxygen into carbon dioxide and water. Cellular respiration uses sugars to charge their ATP. This equation is the opposite from the photosynthetic one. Glucose and oxygen makes carbon dioxide and water, plus some ATP. But if we go back, that's not the only thing different. Photosynthesis only occurs in plants and some microorganisms, while cellular respiration occurs in almost every living thing. Photosynthesis uses sunlight to create its own energy, while cellular respiration needs to consume other organisms as a source of energy. One occurs in chloroplasts, the other in the cytosol and the mitochondria. One transports hydrogen ions using NADP or NADPH, while the other transports hydrogen using NAD or NADH and FAD or FADH2. Since they fit so perfectly together, plants are created to use both photosynthesis and aerobic cellular respiration. This allows the plant to live off a complete cycle of constant energy input from the sun and all the necessary resources. The carbon molecule is the most important, as they can go through the whole cycle without being lost. It normally starts as carbon dioxide, which enters the stroma of this plant cell and goes through the Calvin cycle several times to produce glucose, which then enters the cytosol to be broken down in glycolysis. It then enters the mitochondrion, goes through the citric acid cycle, which then makes carbon dioxide again, and the cycle starts over. Both processes use electron transport chains to enhance the amount of ATP you can get out of a single complete cycle. What is an electron transport chain? They're slightly different when comparing both the processes, but in general, they increase the ATP harvest by transporting hydrogen ions through several complexes using NAD or FADH or NADPH. Those ions are all pumped across one side of the membrane to create a proton gradient. That gradient can be harnessed as a form of potential energy. The proton motive force, the force that moves the ions across membranes, then causes those ions to flow through a large multi-protein complex called ATP synthase. This is literally a motor that causes the ions to rotate, which then generates more energy to run all the other protein machines. The electron transport chain in cellular respiration takes place in the mitochondria. The crucial reactions occur in two main sections in the mitochondrion, the matrix and the intermembrane space. While the intermembrane space is responsible for the proton gradient, the matrix houses all the complexes responsible for the energy transformations. Complex 1 and 2 oxidize NADH and FADH2 and transports its electrons to complex 3, where they are all collected and sent to the complex 4, where oxygen, the final electron acceptor, is reduced to form H2O. Oxygen's electronegativity can only be balanced in this specific order, and once completed, all the complexes are instantly reset to be used again. The electron transport chain in photosynthesis occurs in the chloroplast. The chloroplast contains thylakoids, which are surrounded by the stroma. The membrane in between contains pigment molecules, known as photosystems, which are responsible for turning solar energy into chemical energy. Photosystem 2 must split water molecules using pigmented chlorophylls, or P680, and absorb sunlight in order to excite electrons, which will split H2O into hydrogen ions and oxygen. Remaining electrons are transported to photosystem 1, where P700 is excited by the sun and transported to another special protein called ferredoxin. Ferredoxin transfers the final electrons to NADP to finally create NADPH, together with ATP synthase to produce ATP, which can then be used in the Calvin cycle to create more glucose. From analyzing the data that I have been able to show you, I can conclude that photosynthesis and cellular respiration are indeed related. In general, life can't support itself on its own. It relies on others and its environment. You can't have sugar if nobody makes it. Same thing with CO2 and oxygen. It's all necessary, whether abundant or not. Anyway, that's all I have to show you today. Thanks for watching. Hope this was interesting, and goodbye.